Hello and welcome to Saluting Dad's Army, a series celebrating the brilliance of a comedy show that's become part of all our lives. In this edition, we'll look at how Dad's Army was demobbed on television after 9 years, but only after bringing us some of its most memorable moments. How the series had other lives on radio and the stage, and how the exploits of the Warmington-on-Sea platoon live on, decades since Captain Mannering and his men last marched into action.
Do look all right to be looked at by the film people, don't they, sir?
Yes, all right. Just as long as they get an all-round picture of the platoon.
Very good, sir.
Series 8 of Dad's Army began in 1975, with the platoon called up to do a turn as film extras.
Well, I don't understand this at all, sir. Why do we want costumes? I mean, we've got our own uniforms.
Well, Mannering, your chaps won't be Home Guards. They're playing the Nazis.
Captain Mannering is outraged by the news. Though some members of the platoon embrace the chance to be the baddies.
Schweinhund!
So, we are the masters now, eh? You have just 5 seconds to tell us your plans, or else it is kaput. I like being an officer, don't you, Uncle?
But when they spot the platoon in German uniforms, Mr. Hodges, the vicar and the verger sound the invasion alarm.
Now, pay attention, men.
The whole of the south coast is on red alert. And the brigadier, he wanted to know what blithering idiot was responsible. So I've made an appointment for you tomorrow morning, 10:30.
You stupid boy.
Later in the series, Captain Mannering is much happier, facing some genuine Nazis, after a Luftwaffe crew ditches in a nearby lake. A scout troop served as extras in this dramatic episode, with a special musical role for local lad Tim Ball. Well, Tim, this is a great honour. Did you have as much fun making it as we all do watching it?
I had incredible fun making it, and I think for a 14-year-old lad, it was an honour to know that you're going to be on television with the cast of Dad's Army.
So there you are, you're playing the Reveille, which is this is sort of the wake-up call, isn't it?
I learnt Reveille, and I learnt it tuned perfect. Hodges was a little bit aggrieved.
Here! Hey, don't blow it here. Come with me.
Seeing me about to wake up the whole camp, he thought we could have a bit of fun, divert the noise directly into Captain Mannering's tent.
Blow it here and I'll give you 6pence.
But instead of Reveille, just before we'd shot the scene, one of the producers said, can you just play something very painful and out of tune, because we think it would sound a little bit more horrible for Captain Mannering to wake up to.
Yeah.
Go away, boy.
Well done. Here you are.
What was it like when it came out on telly?
Mum, Dad and I sat there and we watched it, and straight away, as the credits rolled, the phone was ringing.
Of course.
You know, oh, we've just seen you on the television. Yeah, it was a special moment.
So, Tim, the big question, did you get paid?
I got paid the vast sum of money of £50.
50 quid?
It bought me a bicycle and that bought me a record player. Everything a 14-year-old kid needs.
Now, you brought your bugle. Give it a blow. Let's see what you can do. Oh, sweet. At Christmas 1975, Dad's Army brought viewers a really special present. Arthur Lowe playing not only respectable bank manager and Home Guard captain George Mannering, but also his embarrassing brother Barry, a travelling salesman who likes a drink. Have you got that wonderful episode with the brother, the trick salesman?
Well, I mean, Arthur as a drunk, I think, is absolutely brilliant. I remember his wife Joan saying to me, every time I see one of the episodes where Arthur's drunk, I always burst into tears because he was so brilliant at being a drunk.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Is this the party?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Could you tell me your name, please?
Mannering, Barry Mannering. Jukes and carnival novelties.
It's like when he's in the chest.
Yes.
And then they lift it up.
Yes.
Because what floor's this?
Yes, I know. I think it's brilliant.
Ready, left! He's not much of a weight, is he?
No, it's much easier when you all pull together.
Come on, let's go.
Hey!
He doesn't look after his boots like Captain Mannering, does he?
What floor is this, then?
Inventive, memorable episodes such as My Brother and I ensured that Dad's Army remained highly popular in the mid-70s. Not surprisingly, many people tried to replicate its appeal. Dad's Army, hilarious, proclaimed an ad in one newspaper. Now, Uncle's Air Force, a riot. Original story, rights, etc. offered. Meanwhile, ITV attempted to emulate the success of Dad's Army with wartime comedy Yanks Go Home, and followed that with Backs to the Land, a show about the Women's Land Army. And not surprisingly, Jimmy Perry and David Croft's hit show attracted attention from overseas producers.
I was in London on both vacation and business. I was watching television, and I saw Dad's Army on the air, and I fell in love with it.
Will you be bringing your wife, sir?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Elizabeth would do much for Anglo-American relations.
Both David Croft and Jimmy Perry were very flattered, very excited to have somebody showing an interest to them on their work of art. And we got along, we were most compatible, and I arranged to license the rights to Americanize the show and bring it to the United States.
Okay, Wilson.
Yes.
When these Americans arrive,
Yeah.
I want you to line them up, and I'll just say a few appropriate words.
Yes, I trust you're not going to be too formal, sir.
Well, no, of course not. That's the whole point of the thing. Now, I understand there's some sort of a colonel in charge of them.
That's right, yes.
Now, how does one greet him?
Well, he'll probably say, "Howdy, partner, put it there." Howdy, partner, put it there.
Put what? Where?
When we shot the pilot in California, David Croft and Jimmy Perry came over to be present and to be advisors to us, and they co-wrote that script that we used.
The US version of Dad's Army relocated the action from Warmington-on-Sea to America's Atlantic coast and gave the show a new title, The Rear Guard.
Well, the Rear Guard was a copy of Dad's Army. The premise was exactly the same.
You can put down whatever you want, but you're not going to win this war.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are. Adolf Hitler is a jerk. He's nothing but a Nazi. He thinks that he will win the war. He's not so hotsy, hotsy. Your name will also go on the list. What is it?
Don't tell him, Henderson.
Henderson, thank you, Captain.
We loved the pilot of The Rear Guard. We thought it went extremely well, and we're very happy with it.
Several story ideas were prepared for a series of The Rear Guard, but a problem emerged when US broadcaster ABC showed the pilot to focus groups. American viewers just didn't get it.
Nowhere in America had bombers gone overhead, churches bombed, homes destroyed. That was just, the audience didn't understand that and could not accept it and could not associate comedy with that as a storyline.
So The Rear Guard remained just a pilot. However, for producer Herman Rush, compensation came in the form of enduring friendships.
David Croft and Jim Perry and I became close friends, our families. We visited with them and their families several times in London, and we did other things in the future with both of those gentlemen.
We got to get some sandwiches for the prisoners. Go over to my cousin Mario's restaurant. Hold it. You can't feed them from your cousin Mario's restaurant. I ate there last week. So? Under the Geneva Convention, you cannot give the prisoners cruel and inhuman punishment.
Coming up in part 2, on tour with Dad's Army, as the platoon takes to the stage. Welcome back, and it's time to look at the other lives of Dad's Army. The series had been created for television, of course, but radio listeners and theatre goers also lapped up any opportunity to visit Warmington-on-Sea.
I must say we can't wait to get cracking. We haven't handled any live grenades before, haven't you?
David Croft and Jimmy Perry cast Michael Knowles in Dad's Army 6 times, usually as an army officer.
Well, I started in Dad's Army because I was in Jimmy Perry's rep, Watford, and he kept calling me a silly arse. And I suppose that stuck with me, and so whenever a silly arse part came up, I was in it.
Jolly good. Now, Captain Mannering, I want you to get your chaps together and brief them. Oh, don't forget, absolute secrecy. Oh, and here's a list.
Michael's involvement in Dad's Army took a new direction in 1973, when the powers that be at the BBC asked permission to adapt Dad's Army for radio. Jimmy Perry and David Croft were too busy to take on the job themselves, so Harold Snowd, veteran of 5 years on Dad's Army as production manager and director, joined Michael to rework the TV scripts for radio listeners. It wasn't an easy task.
Because there's so much activity and visual stuff that we had to write something else to fill those gaps in. There's a shot with the dog running off with the bomb in his mouth. Well, you can't do that on radio. So look at that dog running away with the bomb. It doesn't work. So you have to find something else to fill it. But it was a lot of that.
Turning a television series full of visual comedy into a radio show was a challenge. But Harold and Michael weren't afraid to make radical changes to the TV original.
We were fearless, weren't we, Harold?
We were totally fearless, yes.
For example, one television episode, Battle of the Giants, was combined with another called Shooting Pains to produce a radio script titled Present Arms.
You hear that, Wilson? Yes. Just before the King's speech.
This script, broadcast to the Empire, was a segment for the BBC's Christmas Night with the Stars in 1972.
Would you mind speaking into the microphone, please?
That's the microphone there, you see.
But Harold and Michael adapted the 14-minute original to become a 30-minute radio episode, retitled 10 Seconds From Now.
Why did Captain Bannon send you down? He could have just telephoned us.
Private, Godfrey, I won't tell you again. Stop talking.
It's the first time I've said anything.
Jimmy Perry told Michael and Harold that some of the radio episodes improved on the television original, but the Dad's Army cast was more sceptical.
And some of them complained bitterly if one of their favourite lines had gone.
Gone, yes.
And where's my line gone from that? I said, well, we had to change it.
One particular member of the platoon would make his opinions very clear.
John Lorry was always very vocal.
Yeah.
If he didn't like something, rubbish, rubbish.
Rubbish, rubbish, yes.
Rubbish!
He wouldn't say that to Jimmy and David, but he shouted it to us.
Yeah.
The last of the 67 radio adaptations was recorded in 1975. And later that year, Dad's Army took on another new incarnation. Jimmy Perry and David Croft had already incorporated musical set pieces into the hit television show. Now a singing and dancing version of Dad's Army was heading for the stage.
We were on location filming, and we were all summoned up to Jimmy Perry's room. And he said, oh, we're going to do a stage show of this. It's going to be a musical. And he went on and on and on about it. Great enthusiasm, you know, everything's going to be friendly. And then he turned to me and he said, I've got this wonderful where you dream about having a banana. And you actually become a banana. And you'll be dressed as a banana. And Iain's face was a total picture. And Teddy Sinclair played the Virgin and said, that all sounds very interesting.
When can I have a banana again?
Here's a rare sight of that spectacular banana-based musical number, filmed behind the scenes by Frank Williams.
I remember saying to Arthur, I'm thinking of getting a cine camera. What would you suggest? And he said, well, if you're going to use it, Frank, I think it'd be something very simple.
Geoffrey Holland would go on to star in 2 Perry and Croft television series, but he was still making his way when cast in the Dad's Army stage show.
It was the chorus, basically, the boys and girls of the ensemble. And I was understudy, Private Pike and Private Walker. A disastrous afternoon came along once when I was asked to do a matinee as Private Pike because Ian Lavender, for some reason, was unavailable that afternoon. And I learned the lines. They all came out in the right order, but I didn't get a single laugh all afternoon because I wasn't Ian Lavender. The only laughs I did get were from the boys and girls in the chorus behind me who were sniggering up their sleeves because I wasn't getting laughs from the audience. It was a disaster, but it was good fun.
BBC cameras captured the Dad's Army stage show in London's West End in October 1975.
Look me straight in the eyes, Wilson. Look out!
No, please, Sergeant. That wasn't fair. I wasn't ready.
No, the Boche won't be ready either.
And they put it together from little bits and pieces of vignettes from various episodes of the TV series, linked together with huge musical numbers. It was an incredible idea, and it really did work so well.
We three in happy row, working for the BBC, Ramsbottom and Nino and me.
I brought you some sausages. I know you like a nice banger.
We got one of our own, Jeff.
Unexploded bombs featured in Dad's Army television scripts more than once. But in London, the stage show was disrupted by a real-life bomb scare.
Well, it was the time of the IRA, and we all had to evacuate the theatre, the audience and everything. Well, of course, if you ask actors to evacuate the theatre and there's a pub opposite, they're all going to disappear into the pub. And remember the sort of look of surprise on the regular customer's face, seeing people in a Home Guard uniform and a vicar and a warden and all those people coming into the pub.
Arnold Ridley celebrated his 80th birthday during the stage show's West End run. But he still joined the cast on the subsequent national tour, a bonding experience for all concerned.
Put a lot of actors together and you really do get to know them in a way that you don't when you're just doing a television series.
I got very close to John LeMessurier over the couple of years that we were doing the show. He was a wonderful man, in lots of ways, very calming and wonderful sort of calming nature, and lovely to be with and talk to. I enjoyed his company very much.
The streets of town were paved with stars. It was such a romantic affair. And as we kissed, said goodnight, a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square.
The stage show was a happy experience, not only for its stars, but also for their families.
There were some really great days out where we went to Longleat and Bewley, and we had an open-top bus at some point, and all the people were waving, and so, special memories. You now look back and think, well, what a lucky kid to be amongst all this and have these great times.
Though for all the fun of touring, one member of the cast stressed that the show must come first.
We were in Richmond, and my home was in Coventry. And I got a phone call just before the finale of the matinee from my mother-in-law to tell me that my wife had gone into labour. So as soon as the curtain fell, I just legged it. I legged it and was by her bedside when the baby was born. When I got back to the theatre on the following day, there was a note in my pigeonhole waiting for me. Mr. Holland, Mr. Lowe would like to see you in his dressing room when you arrive, please. So I thought, hello, I'm in trouble. He never looked at me. He wouldn't look at me. And he said, what you did last night was very unprofessional. And he still wasn't looking at me. He was doing his eyebrows and his moustache. I said, you should have been here. You should have been here. The show comes first. Babies are born all the time. Needless to say, the first flowers to arrive at the wife and baby's bedside were from the Lowes.
The Dad's Army stage show was seen in London and Manchester, Blackpool and Bath, Bournemouth, Birmingham and beyond, and gave those involved some memories to treasure.
One of the happiest years I've ever spent in my life.
It was wonderful, the stage show. I mean, we had a wonderful time.
One highlight being an appearance at the 1975 Royal Variety Performance. Coming up in part 3, Dad's Army reaches the end of the road.
David and Jimmy were sensible enough to want to go out when we were still on the top.
Hello again. It's time to go back to the autumn of 1977. Dad's Army was still pulling in millions of viewers, but as the 9th series reached the air, it seemed that the men of B Company No. 1 Platoon were about to be demobbed. The platoon had certainly forsaken their uniforms in the first episode of the series.
Look, this is no good, Wilson. We don't look suspicious or furtive enough.
The episode I did was called Wake Up Warmington.
You silly old fool! I nearly ran you over. What do you want?
I want to know where is the aerodrome?
What aerodrome?
Where the aerodrome?
The premise of it was that Mannering and Hodges had got their heads together and decided that Warmington-on-Sea was becoming very complacent about the war, and nobody was taking it seriously enough.
We'll shake this town out of its complacency.
Oh, thank you, Napoleon. You and me together will give them a fright they'll never forget.
So they decided that they would dress up as what were then known as fifth columnists and shake the town up a bit, you know, look suspicious and behave suspiciously. The most ridiculous costumes you've ever seen.
You think that fits the bill? I think it looks absurd.
And they walk face to face with these guys who are dressed identically to them.
Show us your papers.
Show us your papers.
Oh, I've had enough of this. In the name of the King, I demand to see your papers.
The episode ends with the 5th columnists under attack from Captain Square and the Eastgate platoon. Even in its 9th series, Dad's Army was still capable of providing action, laughter and surprises. And the show broke new ground in the very next episode, when Mr. Hodges' niece takes a shine to Private Pike.
You've got smashing eyebrows. You've got smashing eyebrows. I love that line. I said, you've got smashing eyebrows.
Have I?
She's the one who really drives the assignation.
Drive being the key word there, as the script sees Jean's character unofficially borrowing Captain Mannering's new staff car.
No harm in just sitting in it.
Jean had been cast as Army driver Sylvia, despite not owning a driving licence. That hadn't been a problem for location shots like this, filmed on private land, but became a major issue when the car had to exit the studio set.
What you doing? They said, well, don't worry, we'll pull you off, and we'll add the engine noises afterwards. So I said, well, fine.
No, look, we'll get into trouble.
Relax, we're going to the pictures.
We'll get into trouble. You'll get me really into trouble.
Not being an experienced driver, I thought, I don't have to do anything. So I just sat there and we did the scene and they started pulling us off. And I thought, why are they pulling me into the camera? We were headed straight for the camera. But I'd forgotten the one thing I still had to do, which was steer. And the look on the cameraman's face.
Sylvia's date with Private Pike is a bit of a letdown. But for the actress playing her, the role provided a wealth of warm memories of Ian Lavender and the cast.
It was a real pleasure, honor, and treat to work with Ian and to work with the whole cast, actually. Iain couldn't have been nicer. And he was so in the skin of who he was that it made it very easy just to play off him.
What are we going to do?
Let's find an haystack and spend the night beneath the stars in each other's arms.
Get off!
I hadn't imagined it would still be so popular, but I'm delighted that it was, and I can see why it is, because they were all such wonderful, seasoned performers, and they all had such strong individual characters, and they were funny.
This is Sergeant Wilson.
How do you do, Sergeant Wilson?
So I really feel honored and grateful and happy that I was given this wonderful opportunity. And it was the first time I'd been to a rehearsal where nobody wore jeans.
The viewers tuning in to Dad's Army and their millions in 1977 were treated to a feast of brilliant comedy business, along with Captain Mannering's endless irritation with Sergeant Wilson.
Why have you brought that stupid-looking dog?
Well, the Knights always used to have them, sir.
Why must you give yourself airs all the time? Why don't you behave normally, like me?
But just a day after the filming of Warmington's Wings for Victory pageant, the press reported that Dad's Army was coming to an end.
Dad's Army ended in 1977, and it was a parting of the ways for a troupe that had become very close to each other. And I think that was probably quite painful.
Well, I suppose David and Jimmy were sensible enough to want to go out when we were still on the top, and we were.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still really, really popular.
It was really an inevitable decision. All the cast were getting older. Many of them had health problems.
They were perhaps glad to be freed to go and do other work and pursue other interests, but yeah, it was, I was never quite the same again.
There was still sort of bit of thought that possibly they'd do some more. And then, of course, Teddy Sinclair, who played the Verger, died. And I think it was at Teddy's funeral that Arthur Lowe said, well, that's it, there won't be any more Dad's Army. And I think it was a right decision.
Yes.
Because you don't want to limp on not being as good as you have been.
Do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler?
The final episode of Dad's Army was transmitted on Sunday, the 13th of November, 1977. Titled Never Too Old, it saw Lance Corporal Jones finally marry Mrs. Fox, the woman of his dreams.
I see her face everywhere I go. I see it in the trees and the hills. I even saw it yesterday on the gasworks.
However, an invasion scare interrupts the wedding celebrations, and the happy couple spend their first night as newlyweds with Mr. Jones on guard duty.
When this is all over, Jack, can we go and live in a little cottage?
Yes, with roses round the door.
Oh, yes. And a big fridge in the kitchen.
What do you want a big fridge for?
To keep all the big joints of meat in.
Well, after the war.
Oh, yes, after the war. Not that we won't have a joint or two before then, of course.
The series ended quietly, with the members of the platoon gathered together on Warmington Pier. And in truth, at the time, the end of Dad's Army didn't provoke a massive amount of comment. Though a national tabloid did lay on a farewell dinner, where Arthur Lowe announced he wouldn't want such a rubbishy newspaper in his home.
I don't usually sit at the rear of the stalls. I usually sit in the grand circle of the two and threepennies.
Yes, well, of course, you just have to take what seats you can, you know, in wartime.
Yes, this war seems to be an excuse for anything. You can't even go to the cinema without it becoming a bacchanalian orgy.
I could watch those episodes again and again and not fail to laugh. And it's like seeing family, and I'm very lucky in that respect that he's kind of immortalised for me.
Characters from Dad's Army were brought back by Michael Knowles and Harold Snowd for the radio comedy It Sticks Out Half a Mile. Then, in the early 90s, Saturday tea time repeats on BBC One brought Dad's Army to a new generation of viewers, and its popularity has not waned since.
I once went to do a talk at a church, and the vicar greeted me and he said, I want you to meet your youngest fan. And I said, oh. And he said, yes, it's my 3-year-old granddaughter.
There
so I
you
thought
are.
that. And they just showed an episode where Mannering and I had a bit of an argy-bargy about the office.
Good evening. What are you doing in my desk, Vicar?
May I remind you, Captain Mannering, that this is my office and my desk, and it is only through my good intentions in this hour of our country's need that I allow you to share it.
But I have a lot of work to do.
Well, the vicar's got a lot of work to do as well.
You
sir.
keep out of this, Wolf. Right.
And suddenly this 3-year-old looked up at me and she said, tell me, that desk, is it yours or is it Captain Mannering's? And I thought she's even following the plot. It's amazing.
Coming up in part 4,
The other foot is in the boat.
just what is it that makes Dad's Army so great?
Did I ever tell you the story of the old empty barn?
Welcome back to Saluting Dad's Army. It's decades since Captain Mannering and his men recorded their last adventure, but of course, Dad's Army continues to delight its millions of fans. Why is that? Just why do we love it so very much?
Now, don't start any of that public school cheating with me.
I watched it all as a kid and just thought it was funny. Then as you get older, you see the class thing between Mannering and Wilson, which is really... I never noticed that as a child, and that becomes more and more absorbing and fascinating.
Perhaps you'd care to explain?
Yes, well, you see, one of my uncles died without leaving any children, so that meant that my side of the family moved up one place, so to speak, and so therefore I am now the honourable.
Bless my soul.
Yes, well, I don't really see why it should make any difference to you and me.
You can bet your bottom dollar it won't make any difference to you and me.
The thing that fuels the comedy in the relationship between Mannering and Wilson is, I think, that kind of simmering anger in Mannering that this isn't fair.
You never fought for anything in your life. Brought up by a nanny, father something in the city. All you had to do is just sit back and let everything come to you.
It is the longing in Mannering to sort of be accepted, which you know he will never, ever achieve. He'll never get there.
Hello, Bathurst. Golf all right? Good.
And then there's that brilliant moment where he's trying to describe how to get into a boat. And he says, very simple, you just simply put one foot in the boat.
I will observe that I keep one foot on the ladder, here, and one hand on the post, here. The other foot is in the boat, thus.
And then, of course, inevitably, the boat starts to depart and he's left doing the splits. So this kind of ridiculous clown of a character is born of this brilliant sense of the English class system and people trying to get above their station but never managing it, and us all loving the fact that they can't.
Excuse us, Mannington.
Though as well as his vain battle to climb the social ladder, Captain Mannering has another struggle on his hands, with the unseen, terrifying Mrs. Mannering.
Hello, Elizabeth?
In a way, Mannering's life was a sort of attempt to impress his own wife, which was ultimately pointless.
I might have a little surprise for you tonight. No, I'm
He's clearly absolutely terrified of this woman. There's one moment where he says, yes, a very happy marriage, very happy indeed.
I've had a very happy marriage. Very happy indeed.
And he does this extraordinary wince, which tells you 35 years of difficulty between the two of them, but just a brilliant, brilliant moment of description by him about his wife.
Mannering's pretense about his marriage falls apart amid a doomed romance in the episode Mum's Army. Proof the series could carry real emotional punch.
Mum's Army, where Mannering has a sort of brief encounter with a character played by Carmel Silvera. I mean, I just think that it's a beautifully moving moment.
What's this? What's happened?
Nothing's happened. I'm just going back to London, that's all.
For how long?
I don't know. A month or two. Perhaps for good.
But you never mentioned it. You never even hinted at it.
I just thought it would be for the best.
But I don't want you to go. The whole pattern of my life has changed. I just live from one meeting to the next.
I know. And I'm just the same, but it's the only thing to do. People are talking.
People always talk. Who cares about them?
But there's your wife.
Nobody will talk to her. He doesn't have the house in Munich.
The romantic drama of Mum's Army was David Croft's favourite of all 80 Dad's Army episodes.
Promise you'll write.
Very well. I promise.
Make it soon.
Goodbye, George.
I think the beauty of the character writing as well was that it got to a stage where, you know, you are so involved with the characters that when they take a risk creatively and doing it, like the episode where they discover that Godfrey was a conscientious objector in the First World War.
I'm terribly sorry about this, Captain Mannering. I've enjoyed so much being with you all, and I can only hope that my service has given every satisfaction. Get out.
That carries a huge emotional charge with it as well, because you're so invested in all those characters.
Cigarette out, no smoking in there.
The story takes a dramatic twist when the platoon practices escaping from a smoke-filled building.
Ah, Godfrey, you're not going to get out of this one.
I'm not trying to get out of it, sir.
Jolly well like to, wouldn't you? Off you go. Remember, I'll be right behind you. None of your damn conchy tricks here.
Godfrey savouring Mannering in the fire, which is incredible. It's like an amazing bit of drama. You just come. It's like, what?
Mr. Hodges. All right, Captain Mannering, I'm coming.
Godfrey rescues Captain Mannering, and as he recovers from his heroics, the platoon visits him at home.
A minute. You're wearing the military medal.
Yes, that's right.
But you told us that you were a conscientious objector.
Oh, so I was.
Well, how could you win the MM?
Well, he volunteered to join the medical corps. And during the Battle of the Somme, he went out into no man's land under heavy fire and saved several lives.
Oh, no, it wasn't as heavy as all that.
Yes.
They realised how wrong their judgment had been. And I think the fact that Jimmy and David could do things like that was pretty brilliant.
In Dad's Army, you are seeing a lot of catchphrases coming through, but they were never looking for catchphrases. This was just what emerged from the characters once they'd formed. Do you think that's wise? Just sums up Sergeant Wilson. Don't panic, they don't like it happen, is the defiance of Corporal Jones.
Very early on, when Steve Punt and I had a kind of, sort of double act on the cabaret circuit, Fraser used to come into it a lot. I used to spend a lot of time going, we're doomed. And all that.
We're doomed. Doomed.
There's one very memorable bit which I kept on saying over and over, probably wrongly, but where he goes, did I ever tell you the story of the old empty barn?
The story of the old empty barn. Well...
There was nothing in it. And it's just got, I don't know why, it just tickled me at the time.
Walk to the church hall at 6 o'clock.
And here's another reason why we love Dad's Army. There's a lot of it to love. 80 episodes. A rare feat in British television history.
It's a huge achievement that Perry and Croft kept up that quality over all that time. I think it just comes from them knowing those characters so well.
You know, Wilson, over the years that I've come to know the members of this platoon, I've grown quite fond of them. But I can't help feeling sometimes that I'm in charge of a bunch of idiots.
If you make something rock solid, which has real soul and meaning, incredibly well acted and just hilarious, people will always like it, you know.
Some of the most precious times I spent with my dad were watching an episode of Dad's Army together. And this was when he was 90, 91, 92. And him just smiling and appreciating. And you can stand back and you just think, isn't this wonderful? And there's not many shows that can do that.
Mr. Mannering? Oh?
Warden wasn't right, was he, when he said the Nazis would walk straight through us?
Of course he wasn't right.
I know one thing, they're not walking straight through me.
Not me. I'll be beside you, Jonesy.
We'll all be beside you, Jonesy. We'll stick together, you can rely on that. Anybody who tries to take our homes or our freedom away from us, they'll find out what we can do. We'll fight.
There's a brilliant moment at the end where they all raise their tin mugs and they propose a toast to the Home Guard.
And we're not alone. There are thousands of us all over England.
And Scotland.
And Scotland. All over Great Britain, in fact. Men who will stand together when their country needs them.
Excuse me, sir, don't you think it might be a nice idea if we were to pay our tribute to them?
For once, Wilson, I agree with you. To Britain's Home Guard.
To Britain's Home Guard.
That seems just perfect and extraordinary and brilliant and really moving as a definition of what this thing was.
The relationships have a kind of timeless quality about them, and a sort of timeless observation of what it is to be British.
And what I hope we'll continue to preserve is that sense of, you know, being together, of having things in common, of keeping perspective and knowing what's important in life that makes that show a show that I hope will go on forever.
But remember, men, we have one invaluable weapon on our side. We have an unbreakable spirit to win. A bulldog tenacity that will help us to hang on while there's breath left in our bodies. You don't get that with Gestapos and jackboots. You get that by being British. So come on, Adolf. We're ready for you.
Well, that's about it. It's been my huge pleasure to explore the story of Dad's Army and to hear from so many people involved in the making of this magical piece of television history. But let's be honest, you don't want to hear all that from me. You want to see this.
I am making notes, Captain. And your name will go on the list. And when we win the war, you will be brought to account.
You write what you like. You're not going to win this war.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are.
Whistle while you work. Hitler is at work. He's half army, so's his army. Whistle while you...
Your name will also go on the list. What is it?
Don't tell him, Pike.
Pike.
We're turning on the Christmas lights this Saturday and transforming into Christmas gold. Starting to feel festive around here. Up next tonight, an actual episode of Dad's Army.